Hi. So I have the interesting honor of being the last poet artist presenting today, and I feel particularly moved to follow Ben and Elliot. Your texts filled me up, so thank you for that. I want to actually relate an anecdote which relates to something that Joy said about how Holocaust poetry has been the trigger poetry. And my impression when you said that was your experience early in your career. So I'm traveling around this week. I'm reading last week also, and I'm reading in different venues. And the last stop in these 2 weeks is at Oberlin. And I sent them the title for my poetry reading, which was something like The Broken Beginning, Poems from Israel. And I got a response back saying that could I please retitle it so that it would be Poems in the Shadow of the Holocaust. I was like, okay, well, it's not really what I'm doing. And the faculty advisor, who's one of my hosts, said he understands, but they're afraid that if we don't have Holocaust in the title, that nobody will come. So that particular perception is alive and well, and I'm trying to work around it. My relationship with Jewish texts and with the Jewishly textual is very literal and very direct. I feel, again, as Joy said, and here I'm quoting you, that this is the place where I've always lived. And that is true of me too. This is the place where I have always lived, in these biblical, midrashic, and most powerfully liturgical Jewish texts. It's a very comfortable place for me, and I've never really given it much thought because of that. And unlike Joy, the poetic and the Jewish were combined for me from the very beginning. That the Hebrew text that I was imbibing in prayer and also in Old Testament studies always felt to me like poetry and were a direct opening up into my own poetry. And the fact that my own poetry was in English made no difference whatsoever. When my first book of poetry, Azimuth, was translated into Hebrew, I gave the manuscript to the translator, Aaron Shabtai, and he at first didn't want to take it on. He thought my poetry looked a little bit too weird for him, and he didn't have enough time, and he wasn't that interested. But I asked him to take it home and look at it a little bit more than in the coffee house, and then come back with an answer. And he came back with an answer the next day. He phoned me up. He said, "It's fine, I'll do it. The poems are already halfway Hebrew." So I felt that he was listening to something that was present in the English, and of course it helps that I read a lot of Dickinson. So these are primary and primal places, and obviously as such they need to be pushed against and queried. For me, it takes place in the political engagement, in the rejection of Jewish exclusivity, and also in the exclusion of women and making a place for myself. I grew up in an Orthodox, very patriarchal, very phallocentric household. The Jewishly textual, the term I'm using, appears, as far as I'm concerned, in the palimpsest and polyphony of the work. Now, I know both of those terms are considered modernist and postmodernist strategies, and indeed they are, but obviously they are also ancient. And one has only to open up a page of Talmud, or even just a page of Old Testament with a lot of the good midrashim around, Rashi and Rashba and Onkelos, to know that that polyphony of voices is long, long ago, and the modernists seem to be coming out of that tradition. I want to complicate all of this. I said I'm very comfortable in the Jewish texts, and indeed I am, and in the sense of Jewishness, of course. What I discovered once I moved finally back to Israel, which was 35 years ago, so I've lived my entire adult life there, I discovered there what it is, and here I'm quoting Adina, a sense of being out of place, not as one might expect. I discovered that returning to the supposed homeland can actually increase one's sense of exile. Obviously complicated by what actually is happening there and what I've become ever more aware of with every passing year. I gave the title of Poems from the Stone of Losses, which is an image that I used through my long poem Azimuth in my first book, which was taken from the Babylonian Talmud, the Baba Metzia, where it says as follows: there was a stone of losses in Jerusalem. Whoever lost something would go there, and whoever found something would go there too. The person who found something would stand by the stone and announce what was found. And the person who lost something would go there and call out the identifying marks of what was lost and reclaim it. This notion of a stone of losses entranced me, and I, of course, appropriated it at once for my long poem Azimuth, where what I understood was lost most profoundly was innocence. And I want to share with you one section from Azimuth. I won't read the whole thing, just a short section. What's also integrated into the text is a line from Darwish, and the prayer, which actually is not biblical, Ani Ma'amin, I believe, which is speaking about the coming of the Messiah. And of course, I revise it. Azimuth, the word Azimuth, I learned it when I was a soldier, and we were being taught night navigation, and the officer told me, you have to take an azimuth. And I was so distracted by the word because it was so beautiful. And I asked him, well, what's the etymology of the word? And he looked at me as though I had come from another planet, because he was trying to teach me night navigation, and I wanted to know the etymology of the word. It actually comes from the Arabic. Azimuth. We travel like other people, but we return to nowhere. Mahmoud Darwish. At the stone of losses, another loss. I, as half stranger, am the one who came to call out the identifying marks of what had been lost, but instead stood on the stone silent. What happened really happened. I flew here. I am the one who pushed against gravel-cut wind, sharp and savage, jagged splinters from the stone, to enter the dark helicopter hull and forgot your face immediately, you who were a step behind. What happened really happened. I believe with perfect faith there were stretchers too heavy to carry, there were bodies left behind, bodies left behind on a dark field. This is a tale that has never been told. I believe with perfect faith that I will find the strength to believe that what happened really happened. I'm using the Stone of Losses image also to encompass the work which the majority of the work which I want to share with you, which is from my most recent book, A Messenger Comes, Elegies. And Ben very kindly quoted from there. The image on the cover of the book is by an Israeli artist named Shai Avivi, and of course, what struck me most was the stoniness of the image and the brokenness of the stoniness, and then this woman's face coming out of it. I was preparing for my father's death, which sounds somewhat horrible, but that's exactly what I was doing. And I went off to a writer's residence with Leon Wieseltier's book Kaddish, which you might know and you might not know. It's a tome. It's a scholarly investigation of the mourner's Kaddish, the mourner's prayer. He also relates his own year of mourning his father's death and speaking the mourner's Kaddish every morning. Again, a 500-page book. It is a book that absolutely excludes women. There's no place for the female mourner there. But the interesting thing is I was still able to really embrace the book, because the moment I said that out loud, I was able to take from it its real treasures. And somewhere in the middle of the book, he offers this midrash, which then became the title of the book, and I think allowed the book to come into being. A messenger comes to the mourner's house. "Come," says the messenger, "you are needed." "I cannot come," says the messenger. "My spirit is broken." "That is why you are needed," says the messenger. So the two primary texts, obviously Jewish texts, that inform this lengthy poem at the middle of the book on my father's death is the mourner's Kaddish, is the mourner's prayer, which I integrate and rewrite, and also the Book of Lamentation, Echa. I want to say a word about the Book of Lamentation. It came forward as a present text late in the composition of this series. I didn't actually know it was trying to make a way for itself. And it's only in halfway through the section that I was thinking and feeling how male mourners are embraced by the community and female mourners are very alone, that the opening phrase of the Book of Lamentation, Echa yashva badad, how she sat alone. The she is, of course, the city. Doesn't matter. The she, for me, became the female mourner, myself and my sisters, and then the Book of Lamentation kind of took over, or definitely made a presence. And this poem is in 22 sections, which are the number of sections in the Book of Lamentation. So I'd like to share with you 6 of these poems, and I won't stop between them. I'll just read them through. I put the text up because I'm very visually oriented, and I know I need that, or sometimes it helps me, but I also know it's a distraction for some people. So if you find it a distraction, close your eyes. Lamentation. Our alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Aleph, prepares itself for radical unraveling. Aleph, at abyss edge, acerbic sky above, and air or ache all abeyant but unabating. Bet, because, ballast or balm, bond to, before, behind, be always. Aleph, again, unavailed, avail, our of, a while, then away, and absent. Abba. Oh, I didn't give that to you, sorry. Hope is a whirl of dead leaves, a reflection of their gold rustling in the wind, is imagined inlet, water moored buoy, miracled railing at cliff's unforgiving edge, in the hospital bed, your fever broken, your eyes open, blood replenished, mysterious elements restored. You recite their names one by one: lymphocyte, monocytes, albumin, creatinine, creation's secrets, modeh ani, spoken as prayer. Each morning you bind yourself to yourself with tefillin, black straps set as a seal upon thine heart, around your upper arm, faith at your forehead. Two quiet black boxes guard parchment within, will tell a tale after, well of living waters, sweet streams from Lebanon. If you bind the straps tight enough, might they hold you to this world a while longer? In the prayer hall, the orphan rises alone to praise the name, raised, lauded, exalted, adored, and blessed. Not a word on death. So will my brothers in prayer shawls stand in the quorum, quiet prayer halls as early morning light receding bears their grief. You see, they are become fatherless. And where will we, my sisters and I, stand? How will we grieve? She sat alone, badad, wanting to be a sounding of sisters, lamentation of swans. White-robed at the feast, full moon and you, insisting we listen again, follow again, as into hidden caverns in the face of a rocky hill, secret library waiting, musky low-stoned ceiling, moss-covered and root-latticed walls clinging to each curve-lipped shelf, pulling toward earth every fallen word caught in your palms, psalms at your lips. Now chanted in white-stained robes as dusty openings, talismanic offerings and codes. The days of awe, your favorite. Stalks from the gleaning. Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, the great book of commandments. The book of creations. The book of questions. The book of remembering and forgetting. The work of the Machanites, 4 brothers, the oldest was Nathan. The book of the perfumer, 12th century Elazar, ben Judah of worms, each letter still thick with fragrant musk, you said. Zohar Chadash, a book from the ruins, a book of the fathers, the book of glory, a daughter's book of mourning. Always that tilting stack at your bedside and poetry tucked in tallis bag, private haven in prayers gathering, like those concealed in the stranger's sleeve or charred leaves pulled from flames, singed and savored, as voiced enduring, entitled phrase or page, illumined art, all in my lettered heart, dedicated to you. And I'm going to end with one last poem, which is from a series called Last Morning Poems. And my uncle died in America, but insisted that his body be sent to Israel for burial, which happens. And we were there to receive the body. It was already the middle of the night, and the rule was you had to bury the body at once. I'd never been to a middle of the night funeral. And it was a religious funeral. All the men were at the graveside, the women were not, and all the men took off their shoes. And I end with this because I have very, very little humor in my work. And this is one moment which offers something, and my father would have liked me ending with this. It's called At the Last Funeral My Father Attends, which doesn't sound very cheery, but stay with me. At the last funeral my father attends, he stands by the open grave in his stocking feet. It is night. His white buttoned shirt is torn at the collar, rent. Men chanting psalms sway by lamplight among the tombs as black-coated grave diggers ask forgiveness of the dead. My father is burying his brother. The men, all in their black socks, walk over stone and dirt back from the grave. By the mourner's bus, they discover a small boy has run off with all their shoes. Thank you.